Now the story of how a little boy turned to a life of crime. But if you're expecting a heartbreaking tale of poverty and hard times, you won't, not this time. This little boy, now a man, grew up in the suburbs, his family about as stable as they come. And yet at some point, he took a very wrong turn. Why? And what it took to turn him around again is a story every parent should hear. Here's Sarah James.
Antisocial kids are very difficult to like. I was not an easy kid to like. You had to really go out of your way to like me.
All too often, the kind of young punk this man once was will spend his life behind bars, a career criminal. But this former felon was fortunate. He got a second chance.
You got to believe in people, and you've got to believe in redemption. You've got to believe that people are capable of turning themselves around.
You probably think you know stories like this one, that John Richters grew up in a broken home in a poor neighborhood. But clearly that's not the case here. John was raised in this middle-class house in West Hartford, Connecticut, and to the outside world seemed to have every possible advantage.
It was pretty much a typical suburban childhood, wasn't it?
To many people, it would seem like the Waltons.
You were expected to go to college, get a job, wear a tie, get married and have some kids.
Absolutely.
But in his younger years, John was a rebel, acting out against his father, a gruff, intimidating World War II hero.
Of course, I'm not an emotional man. One cannot show emotion. One had better not show emotion during war.
People didn't know what I knew, and that was that he was a tough man and he didn't love me.
Jack Richters, an ex-Marine, worked day and night at 2 jobs to support his wife and 8 children, but believed there was just one way to raise them, his way.
That doesn't mean lining the kids up for parade drill. That doesn't mean hitting the kids, although that's not a bad thing once in a while, but it didn't. It meant when I said, get out of my sight, that means go.
I was angry at the world. I was angry at my father, and what I did was an attempt to destroy his reputation.
John committed his first crime in grade school, stealing money from the church collection plate. By age 15, he had been kicked out of 3 different 9th grades.
What was that like, watching your son bounce from school to school, not being able to make it in the 9th grade?
When one looks down into a hole during war, you count 19 dead down there, then it's very difficult to get panicky about this.
In fact, there seemed nothing John could do to get any obvious affection or emotion out of his war-hardened, overworked father, even when he graduated to crimes much more serious than raiding the collection plate.
Eventually, I got involved in selling drugs on the street, mostly marijuana, some heroin.
30 years ago, John and his gang of teenage thugs were terrors. They mugged drunks, stole cars, and burglarized homes in the well-off Connecticut suburbs. And they were prepared to be violent.
First thing we would do is look for the sharpest knife we could find, in the off chance that somebody were to catch us.
He was trying to run away from something, and maybe he was trying to run away from me and my discipline. I don't know.
Nothing mattered to me then.
By age 18, he had been arrested a couple of times, but even several nights in this jail didn't faze him. His parents were sure he was headed for a tragic ending unless they did something. That's when they made the most agonizing decision any parent could make.
Maybe the longest drive in my life.
Why?
Hell, I was taking him up to a bad place.
He was taking him here to a mental institution. It was a scene right out of the chilling movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
No! I won't go! Did you feel like Jack Nicholson?
Sure, I knew that I wasn't crazy, but I was behind locked doors, completely at their whim.
A sane man trapped by some awful mistake, and 30 years isn't long enough to erase those dark memories.
People talking to themselves and hallucinating and urinating on themselves. It was 30 days of eternity.
The toughest tough love, and a wake-up call even John couldn't ignore.
I remember weeping. I think the last time my parents came in, I begged them to take me out of this place.
After a month behind locked doors, John's parents finally brought him home. And slowly but surely, John began to grow up and even start to understand the ways of his father.
Did you ever come close to giving up on him?
Not even close. That's not what I do.
His family had given John a second chance. But how would the rest of the world treat someone with a criminal past and only an 8th grade education?
I remember the head of the personnel department literally tearing up my application with some pride in front of me.
We don't take your kind here.
Absolutely.
John knew he could only go so far without the education he'd skipped so many years before. But who would accept a dropout and former hood? A man who hadn't read his first book until he was 25 years old. All John knew was that he had changed and could prove it if given a chance. At 29 years old, the man who'd never made it out of 9th grade wanted to go to college. He met none of the requirements.
I had acquired a fire. I had a fire in my belly.
And this would be the man with the power to either extinguish or fuel that fire. Stephen Trachtenberg, then the president of the University of Hartford. When John walked into your office, what was he like?
He's extraordinarily charming and very persuasive, and it's a good thing for all of us that he didn't go into the life insurance business, or we'd all have more insurance than we needed.
You're talking about a man who had an 8th grade education,
Right.
who had no SAT scores,
Right.
and a criminal record.
That's correct.
What were you thinking?
Every once in a while, an admissions officer is going to take a gamble and admit somebody who is not vanilla off the shelf.
What flavor would you say John was?
John was Rocky Road, I think.
But college couldn't have been smoother. He graduated with a 3.98 grade point average, summa cum laude. The former drug dealer, at 33, had found a new kind of heady high.
I loved what I was doing.
And 15 years later, he's still loving it.
I spend excessive numbers of hours in front of a computer. I write for a living. I'm a nerd.
A nerd writing about today's troubled kids. But that's not John's only area of concern. 2 years ago, he took a chance on the man who had taken a chance on him. Now the president of George Washington University, Trachtenberg found himself in hot water. His campus was in an uproar, the media calling for his job, all because he tried to give a break, a scholarship, to another young felon, a high school basketball phenom with a sexual assault conviction. Then, out of nowhere, John Richters came to the rescue. What was it like to have the man you'd helped out giving you a helping hand?
Well, it was a nice, sweet moment.
To save his mentor, John went public for the first time with his own criminal past. In an open letter to the school, John took the blame for Trachtenberg giving a second chance to another problem kid.
He's seen his ability to change some lives and was trying to do it again.
Richter's letter helped. A Washington Post columnist quoted it, and immediately the controversy died down. Trachtenberg's job was saved. You're proud of your son.
You betcha I am.
Do you tell him that now?
Of course not.
Do you tell him you love him?
Of course not. My father never did to me.
It's as if you know you probably should, but you're not going to because you never have and you never will, and
You're right.
too stubborn
You're
to change.
absolutely right. Absolutely.
Today, John Richters is a parent himself, and he's learned some lessons from his past. As you can see, he has no trouble showing love and affection for his young daughter. And in his professional life, he's taken the hard lessons of his youth to become one of the government's leading authorities on antisocial kids at the National Institute of Mental Health, as well as the grown-up poster boy for second chances.
Be prepared to take a second chance, third chance, umpteen chances.
One final note. John named his daughter Catherine Chance Richters. The chance is in honor of all the people who took a chance on him.